Good morning. Well, Christmas is on its way, nearly here. A couple of weeks off. The signs have been there for a while. The blooming of the jacarandas for me is a sign that summer is here and Christmas is not far behind. The cicadas singing in the bush and summer is here. Christmas is almost upon us. Walking the streets with our dogs, we see the blow-up Santa Clauses and reindeers and signs and red and white and green and gold all over the place. Some of them have nativity scenes, the lights on houses at night. Christmas is nearly here. And maybe the Christmas tree and the corn is a bit of a giveaway as well. Christmas is not far off. And there's growing expectation in the air in people's lives, particularly amongst children. Expectation of Christmas Day and holidays and parties and presents and food and all the rest of it. For others, there's expectations. Some of it's high anticipation of good things, of gathering with family and friends and celebrating. But for others, it's a reminder of family conflicts and struggles, or the pain of remembering those who are no longer with us. Christmas brings a range of expectations, but also hopes. And I wonder what it is we actually hope for and expect out of Christmas, and what this hope or expectation is grounded in. Alongside this journey through Advent to Christmas is the news that continually comes to me. News that is personal through my own life or the life of people I know who talk to me, people and groups and of our communities, of our nation, of our world. The news that fills the airwaves, the radio, the television, the news feeds on our devices. News of violence and struggle and pain. There's good things as well, but most of the news that touches us and overwhelms us is the hard stuff. The difficult things in people's lives that cause pain and suffering. Things that overwhelm us. Things within our world, the continuing warfare in the Ukraine and the suffering of people. Not just the Ukraine people, but mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters in Russia who lose their sons and daughters. The continuing conflicts and fighting and violence and suffering in Palestine and Israel, and particularly in Gaza. Where people are losing life and losing hope and losing homes and losing everything. Where there's humanitarian crisis erupting in that place every day. And of other parts of the world where there's conflict and stress and strain and natural disaster and fires and floods and famines and all sorts of things that wreck people's lives and cause a rise in refugees and suffering and hopelessness. It's these sorts of questions, and the questions of a warming planet that come to us frequently, the strange weather patterns, the increasing temperatures that are there every year. What do we do? That's a question we ask, or I ask certainly a lot. What do we do? What do I do? This week, I turn to Luke's story of Jesus again, and it continues that enigmatic story of John the Baptizer, who comes from the desert regions, the wilderness, a strange, ascetic, wild man. And he comes into the region of the River Jordan, outside Jerusalem, and the people, the crowds, come to him. They're drawn to this strange, hellfire, brimstone, street preacher, John. And as they come and gather, he says, "You brood of snakes, who warned you to flee the coming wrath, the coming judgment? And do you think that being children of Abraham is going to save you? Do you think your status, any status, is going to save you from the coming judgment?" And on he goes. Repent. Turn around. Do it differently. I don't know what I'd have thought going out there. I've not been called a snake. I don't think so. Probably been called worse things, but maybe not a snake. He's calling them all snakes, and not just one or two, but everyone. It's inclusive. It's all of you. And what are you trying to do? Escape? But the people listened to him. And they started asking him questions. So, what shall we do? The question that we ask in our world, what shall we do? What do we do? And I don't know what they imagined the answer would be. Go out on a retreat into the desert like me. Get away from the city and its bad vibe and all the kind of influences there. Get away from the politics and religion and all the other stuff. Come out here and get new with God. But no, it's none of that. There's no leaving, retreat, distraction. It's go home. Effectively go home. Go back to your lives, but live differently. And he says, if you've got 2 tunics and you see someone who's got none, give them one of yours. Be generous and share. And that interesting about the tunics, it was the undergarments that people wore. And they had 2 sets, one for everyday life and one for the Sabbath, the holy day, proper day. And John's effectively saying that justice, compassion, generosity is more important than religious purity or piety. If someone has a need, give it to them. And then the tax collectors come up to him and said, well, what should we do? Tax collectors were people who worked for Rome, and they put in bids to get their, to be allowed to be a tax collector in a region, to collect the taxes for Rome. And they had to pay that up front, and so they would increase the level of taxation they took in order to pay for that and make a profit for themselves. And John says, do the right thing. Don't take more tax than you're supposed to. Don't rip people off. Be compassionate and just. And then the soldiers come up, well, what do we do? Be grateful for the money that you get, your income. And don't use your position, your status, your power to lord it over others and demand of them and take from them. Be satisfied and caring. In other words, be just, be loving and caring, be generous, share, live lives that are just and fair in the world, and treat people as equals, and don't rip them off, but help one another. It's about living your life more truly and deeply where you are, more lovingly and graciously where you are. What should we do? Can we change the war in Ukraine or in Gaza? No, we can't. We can protest and advocate and write letters to our politicians. We don't have to be totally ignorant, but we can't fix it ourselves. We can contribute to those who are trying to advocate and help. We can't change the warming planet on our own, but we can contribute to what is good for the earth and what will help reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the air, fossil fuels, reduce our use of them, reduce our energy usage, live lives that are simpler. How can we help those who are impoverished across the world? Give some money. I remember in one of the small churches that I served once, there was this woman called Rebecca. And Rebecca is this energetic and passionate woman. Her sister, Shelley, worked with Uniting World, the Uniting Churches Overseas Aid and Advocacy and Justice arm. And she worked in West Papua amongst these beautiful Indigenous people, helping them to engage in the world that was difficult, and the Indonesian had taken over and were running the place, and how to live in this new world and survive. And when the political situation became too intense, too heated, Uniting World prepared to take her out. It was too dangerous. And as she was preparing to leave, her sister Rebecca said, Shelley, you've told us stories about these beautiful people. What can we do for them? What should we do? And so Shelley went and asked the people. And I'm not sure what they expected to hear. What should we do? But as they talked within their communities and amongst the people, they came back and said, we need clean water, fresh water. If you can help us get clean water into our villages and remote areas where people are struggling, and where there are sometimes springs and stuff, but they become polluted and with animal waste and dirt and other things, our people become sick. They're often at a distance from the village, and the women particularly have got to walk long distances, and the girls miss out on school and a whole lot of problems. If we could get wells local to our villages, that would help our people immensely. And so they developed a process of digging wells, and Rebecca's husband was able to help them make fiberglass moulds to put concrete in and create the pipes for the wells, and in sections that they could dig the hole and put a section in and then dig more, and as it sunk put another section on, and the weight would help them. But they hand dug. And they worked out this process, and each well would cost about $2,500 to buy the materials, to pay the team, and to hire a vehicle and all that. So back here, the task was raise money. And so the little congregation did market days and stalls and all sorts of things. They talked in different churches and clubs and wherever they could to get donations and tell the story. And as the story grew, and as more wells were developed, and as more photos, they got more support. And then gradually all the churches in that region gathered together, and they did bigger things together. And they worked out a way of raising lots of money that would buy a vehicle for the team. So they didn't have to keep renting a truck every time they wanted to build a well. And they had a vehicle in between times to do other work and to train other young people in doing some of this work. What can we do? Share our money. Do something that contributes to this building wells. And when we get the videos and photos back of these villagers that are just so excited and happy because they've got fresh, clean water, something we take for granted, something so simple, but so profound in their lives, what can we do? We can give money. We can work hard to raise money, to hand it over. We can love the people in our neighbourhoods. We can get involved with those who are hurting and struggling and suffering. We can go and share with places like Meals Plus in Parramatta that serves meals to the hungry and homeless of Parramatta, but also offers them care and services and gets to know them and treats them as people. We can become involved in community organisations and churches that serve the poor and the struggling and the hurting and the dying and the grieving and the lost. We can love. We can love in our lives. And where there's conflict and hatred and enmity, we can try and bring reconciliation, peace, the love of God into the lives of people. I think that's what John is saying. Just go out and love. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God, the prophet said. And I think this is the invitation. And as we move towards Christmas, the breaking into human life of this Christ child, the breaking in of Christ into our lives is daily. And where there's love, and where there's justice, where there's hope, where there's peace, where there's freedom, where there's safety, God is present. In the midst of the brokenness of people's lives, God is present to hold, to care, to love, especially as we reach out to love them. What do? Love. Amen.